I have children at home, so safety is a huge thing for me.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to AmmoMart. It's good to be with you. We're back at our normal spot outdoors at Ghost Town, where we've begun decorating for the holiday season, even though, according to the temperature, you wouldn't know it. It's a beautiful fall day. I'm excited to get with you today because we're going to launch a new series centered around new female gun buyers. And that's important because they are a huge percentage of new gun buyers ever since the pandemic. And importantly, a lot of the concepts that apply to them also apply to new gun buyers in general. The focus of our study is going to be one of my coworkers who has almost no handgun experience, but is totally interested in becoming an everyday carry person, as well as, of course, first, a safe, competent shooter. So I'll introduce Kayla, and we'll have a bit of conversation about where she wants to go with this and where she is right now. So I would like to introduce Kayla McNally, who's been the office administrator at Buffalo Cartridge for a few years. During that time, she's been surrounded by guns, bullets, and all things firearms, but has never really delved into the topic for herself. So what I'd like to do is talk to Kayla a little bit about where she's at now and where she would like to go in the future as far as being a new gun owner. So Kayla, what's the sudden interest in shooting? What has changed? What has decided in your mind that now's the time?
Well, mainly I would say because I've become more aware of the increased crime rates around me. You don't have to be in an extremely busy town or city for things to happen. So, and I see crime rates in women and also in children, and it's scary out there. And I want to be able to protect myself and protect my children if needed.
Yeah, it's interesting. I just read an article the other day that said violent crime is up 39% since last year.
Really?
Yeah, so I'm sure you could find people that would dispute that. I'm just saying things are probably not going to get better, right?
And things have changed since I was a child. I was completely comfortable. My parents were completely comfortable with me going out in the neighborhood, riding my bike solo by myself. Nowadays, I just never know whether or not that's 100% safe for my children. So if I need to go on a walk with my kids, I'd like to be carrying and know how to protect myself and my kids if needed.
One thing I would like to stress going forward with you is one of the perhaps better ways to look at it isn't really what the odds are, is what the stakes are.
Okay.
If you're caught unprepared or unawares.
Right.
They can be quite high. So you have one hand is statistical probability, depending on how you view the world. It's either quite large or it's quite small. But what never changes is the stakes involved when you need a firearm and you don't have it. You see?
Yeah.
So while you train, while you practice, while you handle the gun, that's kind of the mindset we want going forward, is how proficient you have to be successful, God forbid, in the event that you need the gun, right? So we have automatic behavior because the stakes are high.
When it comes to firearms itself, being a beginner, everything is very intimidating, whether it's knowing what questions to ask, what is best for me.
Yeah, it's intimidating to everybody, so it's not I think it's a little more intimidating because maybe most women have less of a background in it. But I think most people, if they were honest, would be intimidated, or they should be. That's where safety kind of starts, really. So it's a good thing.
Okay.
So have you had any experience with guns prior to this at all?
I have, but it's been very minute. Just backtracking a little bit, I would say that probably about 15 plus years ago, that's when I was first introduced to firearms.
Okay.
Just so happened to be. My boyfriend at the time lived close to a range, so I thought, why not? Let's go ahead and bring you out there. Safety was a huge thing back then as well, but still, I was younger, it's intimidating. The recoil was just way too much for me. I started with a .22 Ruger, and I seemed to like that.
Most people do.
Yes, and then I progressed to a 9mm handgun. I'm not sure what kind it was.
Okay.
It was, far away. But the recoil, it was just too surprising for me. It was too much. I had casings that were flying in my face, down my shirt. It was just too much for me.
Right.
So at that point, I determined that is this something that is really meant for me at this time in my life? And no, it wasn't. I was focused on college. There was just too many things that...
Right. Life gets in the way.
Yeah, exactly.
Sure. So good news is all of that's a pretty common tale. Most people have some handgun or gun experience when they decide to either get back into it or get more serious about it. Everything you've described is totally normal. Start with a 22, little exposure therapy, and then you graduate up to something larger. Now, sometimes the challenge is without proper information, the gun recoils excessively because you don't know how to make it stop doing that.
Right.
So the first thing, obviously, is we'll talk about is some handgun safety. And let's sort of repeat the process that you had before, where we'll start with a 22. We'll get a little bit of instruction on how to stand, control the gun, and all of that. And, of course, we'll go over the safety aspects first. And then we'll shoot a little bit and see what happens, okay? Because it sounds like what you're kind of on the path to doing is actually purchasing a gun and then seeing how that works for you.
Correct.
Is that true?
Yes.
Okay. And then maybe down the road becoming an everyday carry person all the time or a sometime carry person, or what's your vision for that?
I do want to eventually every carry. That's going to be something that I want to work towards. However, in order for me to do that, my comfort level, my confidence level needs to increase. I have children at home, so safety is a huge thing for me. And plus coordination, movement, that is something that I'm definitely going to have to work on because it's not just one part of your body moving.
Right.
You're going to have, I'm assuming, stance and everything else.
Sure.
Falls into line there as well.
Sure. So good news is with a little bit of instruction, it sounds like a very difficult riddle to solve, but really isn't.
Okay.
Based on your responses of the things you're concerned about is exactly what you should be concerned about. The statistics of what can happen when you bring a gun into your home are not good if read at a first glance, and it's something that everybody should absolutely pay attention to. But, as we said, it's something that you just train past. With intelligence and following industry best practices, everything will be fine. Okay. So, I know me telling you that doesn't buy you a lot of reassurance, but I think once you see the process happen, it'll make more sense and you'll be a lot more comfortable about how things will eventually end up when you become an everyday carry person.
Right.
I'm a proponent of that. I've said on the channel before, the people that concern me are the ones that carry the gun once every 6 months. I think that's the ingredients for disaster. So if you get a little bit immersed, you'll probably stay immersed and you'll be totally fine. Okay?
Okay. Well, my main fear and the why that I decided not to carry for so long was just because of accidental discharge. If I don't properly know how to operate a firearm, taking it out of the holster, many different things, that's always something been back in my head. What if this happens?
So a lot of times, I hear this all the time with new students, right? I'm not comfortable carrying the gun. It's right here. It's loaded. I don't know what to do if I have to pull it out and put it away. Totally understand. But if you look at it from the standpoint of, say, like traffic safety, the vast majority of people that are involved in motorcycle accidents, that happens to them within the first 6 months of obtaining the license. Okay. It's the same concept with new drivers. They're the most dangerous people on the road. Lack of experience, right? So some of that fear is driven by the fact that there's a lot of people that are carrying guns every day that are not trained. They, just because you've been doing the wrong thing for 40 years doesn't make you correct, right?
Right.
So hopefully by the time we're done, we're going to start from like zero, the very, very base foundation, and go up to the point where you know and are totally comfortable and competent carrying the loaded gun every day under a completely wide array of circumstances. Okay, but it's just like learning to drive. It's the very same thing. You just start slowly. You don't put new drivers in situations that are too complex for them to solve. Right. And as time goes on, gradual gain in training and skill set, it actually just starts to solve itself. Okay. Totally rational fear.
Right.
But like anything, it's just something that you train past if you're willing to do that. A lot of the accidents that you're talking about are basically people that didn't know what they didn't know, and they got a very negative result.
Okay.
So you mentioned that you have children at home, and bringing the guns into the house was a big thing for you, and especially being a person who's going to have everyday contact with the gun. Here we go again. Statistics, depending on how you interpret them, change, but when you bring the gun into your home, your chances of being involved in an incident of violence goes up 25%. Now, some would argue that that was already quite small, so that increase, thing about it is, accidents happen, except they're not. Now they're called negligence, and if not stored properly, the bad guy now has your gun.
Right.
If not trained properly while trying to use the gun, now you've harmed a family member, and your DNA is forever changed, right? So it's an awesome decision to make. One you shouldn't enter into lightly, which obviously you haven't. But when we decide to do that, what makes it better is training, right? So it's basically a matter of how committed one is to owning the firearm, being able to use it proficiently, and having it around safely when it's not in use.
Right.
Okay? So you're on the right track. It's really, really true that a lot of negative things happen to the owner when the gun comes into the house. Okay?
Okay. So do I need a concealed carry license in order to carry here in the state of Ohio, or?
You do not.
Okay.
In June of 22, the law changed, and Ohio became what's called a constitutional carry state. The difficulty with that is that you're still subject to the same codified ordinances relating to carry the firearm as you would had you attended the class where you would have been instructed and tested on those concepts. So you don't have to, but I highly recommend even people that don't have any designs on carrying the gun out in public to take that class in whatever state they're in. It's invaluable information. The training is usually pretty good. And also, importantly, it allows you to travel to other states while you're carrying your firearm. My experience has been a lot of people don't realize that if you're not a permitted carrier in one state, you cannot legally carry in another. If you have the permit, you can, depending on that state's laws.
Yeah, and that makes sense. I mean, I do have family that live out of state. There's going to be times where I do travel and I want to have that level of protection if needed. So it would make sense that my end goal would to get a concealed carry license.
Yeah, it never makes sense to me to not get the training. It's usually a weekend. I think in Ohio now it's 8 hours. Totally worth your while, regardless of whether you carry the gun every day or not.
And if I was to carry, I would want to be well informed anyways.
In fact, you must be, because that's when people start to run afoul of the law.
Okay.
And judges and prosecutors really don't care about, I don't know, when we're talking about a loaded gun. They don't have a lot of patience for that, so totally a good idea.
Okay.
So, real quick, you said you got kids at home.
Yes.
And then you shot before, but you guys have guns now that you don't use in your house, or you kind of...
Well, I mean, yes, we do have firearms in the home just because my husband is an everyday carry. He has his concealed license.
Perfect.
But the thing is he's not always with myself or my children 100% of the time. So that's another reason why I think an everyday carry for myself personally is essential. Because I can't always count on him to be there if he's not.
Sure.
So just me being at home or going to the grocery store, or going to my normal, everyday errands, whether it's by myself or with my children, I want to be able to protect myself if the need arises.
Oh, sure. And I 100% agree about the aspect of the absence. But it's also important to know all of the weapon systems that you have in your home for your own safety.
Right.
They're going to be there. It's probably a good idea, beyond a good idea, to have some idea of how to make them safe. Okay. How to use them, and how they work. That seems to me to just be a prudent thing to do if they're going to be there. So, down the road, many things to work on. And like I said, we're going to meet several times over the coming months and see how things go. Okay. And you'll find that it's all a process. Well, first we'll do a video, of course, about buying guns separate from this video. And that's a whole complicated thing. But we'll start addressing that problem when we shoot on the range today. I've actually got a couple of different guns for you. Some with safeties, some with different frame sizes and geometries. And you'll see some you're going to like right away, and some you won't. And there's a lot of variations about why you will and won't like them. Mm-hmm. When you buy, if you don't like it right away, chances are you never will. It's just how it is. You might convince yourself that eventually you'll like this, but that's pretty rare. You'll kind of know, okay? So let's go down to the range and sort of repeat the process you had before and see what happens.
Sounds great.
Okay?
Okay.
Awesome.